In the 1960s and 70s, the BBC had an awful habit of junking programmes it thought would never be rescreened. So my subject today is the two George Orwell adaptations that we'll probably never see again. My last video ended in 1956, and for 9 years there wasn't much happening on the Orwell dramatisation front. The movie of 1984 had been a disaster. Then, on October the 11th, 1965, the BBC Home Service broadcast a radio play of 1984 starring Patrick Troughton and Sylvia Sims. Troughton, funnily enough, had appeared in the movie of 1984, uncredited, as a telescreen announcer.
Here is an important bulletin from the Ministry of Love. Tonight, Big Brother ordered the re-arrest of the arch traitors Jones and Rutherford.
Weeks later, the TV channel BBC Two would devote itself to Orwell for the month of November. The channel had launched in 1964 as the experimental high-definition service of its day, broadcasting in 625 lines instead of 405. That's why its highbrow anthology series was called Theatre 625. The producer of the Sunday night show, Cedric Messina, would often make trilogies based on the work of one particular writer, and he had the bright idea of remaking the 1954 Nigel Kneale script of 1984 that had caused such a storm, with Peter Cushing in the lead role.
How many fingers am I holding up, Winston?
A lot of people didn't have TVs in 1954, so he thought, let's do it again, more lavishly, and adapt two more Orwell novels while we're at it. So on 7th of November, BBC Two screened Keep the Aspidistra Flying, adapted by Robin Chapman. This is about a whinging, sexually frustrated, aspiring poet who gives up his job as an advertising copywriter, goes to work in a bookshop while he labours away on his poems, and generally messes up his life to the dismay of his long-suffering girlfriend Rosemary, who keeps refusing to go to bed with him. There's a 1997 film of this entitled The Merry War in some countries, but that's done as a romantic comedy. Chapman and Morahan's version from 1965 is much more faithful to the book, but is quirky in its own way.
Does this fill your mind with poetic thoughts?
Oh yes, it's constipated with similes and metaphors.
Characters talk to the audience, there's a lot of back projection going on, like here. And in one scene, the protagonist, Gordon Comstock, visits a big house for a party, and he hallucinates that the maid who answers the door starts gradually taking all their clothes off. The critics who didn't like the play said that it was too gimmicky. There's even an advertising poster that talks to Gordon, and the actor doing the voice had to stand behind the wall and operate the eyes and mouth. Now this season was a good excuse for the BBC to screen the Halas and Bachelor cartoon of Animal Farm the following Sunday.
Here is a cartoon with a difference.
The Saturday after that they showed the first TV documentary about Orwell, which does exist in the archives. George Orwell, 1903 to 1950, directed by Jack Bond, was a series of reminiscences from people who knew and loved him, including his sister Avril and his second wife Sonia. And clips from this turn up in a lot of other documentaries.
Of course, he liked these very morbid stories about mysterious plagues and illnesses. He liked the Mask of the Red Death, and he liked Orwell's imaginative stories about people from other worlds causing epidemics and pestilences.
Getting back to the plays, however, we come to the much acclaimed Coming Up for Air, again scripted by Chapman. This is the story of a tubby insurance salesman in 1939, just before the outbreak of war, who's in the middle of a midlife crisis, wins some money on the horses, deceives his nagging wife and bratty kids about it, and takes a holiday in the village where he grew up. A lot of the novel is kind of in flashback. It's this guy George Bowling reminiscing about his idyllic childhood, going fishing, his first love, and then serving in the First World War. Chapman finds various inventive ways to convey this, such as George dreaming that he's giving a speech about his life to the village hall. Now, the critics on the newspapers absolutely loved this one. I mean, there's a general consensus that it was one of the best TV productions of the year, and everybody raved about Colin Blakely, the lead actor, who was just a genius at playing the ordinary, exasperated man. You might have seen him as Dr. Watson, in fact, in Billy Wilder's 1970 film, The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes.
Holmes, I saw it! The monster! It's getting closer and closer.
That just leaves the remake of 1984, which the BBC threw money and resources at the time, and they hyped it to the skies, and it just turned out to be a damp squib. There was all this location filming at Camber Sands in East Sussex, on the streets of London, and at Dungeness Nuclear Power Station in Kent, which was meant to be the Ministry of Truth, but just looked like a nuclear power station. But the audience didn't really care because the story didn't shock people anymore. They were desensitised. If you're a science fiction fan, you'll know there are many missing episodes of Doctor Who because the BBC had a policy, not just with sci-fi, but across the board, of throwing away the past. If they had programmes that they thought were taking up too much space, or they wouldn't have the rights to show again, they destroyed them. And they did this with all three of these Orwell adaptations. Fortunately, a videotape of the 1984 remake re-emerged in 2010 in the American Library of Congress. It had been shown many years earlier on a New York TV station. The only problem was that there was a 7-minute stretch in the middle that was very badly damaged and it couldn't be recovered. And so for the next 19 years, until the John Hurt movie about 1984 that I'm sure you all know about, that was it for Orwell adaptations. Except in 1967, Patrick McGoohan made his bizarre action-adventure series, The Prisoner, which is the most colourful Orwellian slice of spy-fi you'll ever see. And there's 17 episodes of it. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll be back soon to talk about the 1970s. Till then, be seeing you.
Come ahead, son. Let's see what you're made of. Find out what's in that noddle of yours. A find missing link. When I've found it, I will refine it and tune it, and you will play our game.